Hey, welcome everyone to the breakdown. This is Tanya Lee and Johanna Burkhardt for episode 123. I can't believe it. We are already on 123.
Oh, so fast.
So fast. And already I feel like we are with here in New Jersey, it's getting fall-like, extremely fall-like here, even though we're at the tail end of August. I know that you're not quite feeling it yet in your area, Johanna, but I am feeling the Halloween spirit here already. Definitely feeling it. So on today's episode, we wanted to go over hauntings and exorcisms. And I have been fascinated with the paranormal, especially ghosts. Especially, in the States, they have like the ghost hunters and all of those TV shows. I don't know if you ever got into them, Johanna, but
a little bit.
I was always fascinated with them. And there's a lot of historical areas in my area, especially in Philadelphia and so forth. And we have gone on some ghost hunts of those areas as well. And I am so excited to have somebody on board who is not only a professional at this, but also a professional exorcist and has some, of course, she's going to have some great stories, but the fact that she educates people on this as well. So just as a reminder to all of our viewers, our listeners, we are always respectful of all of our guests. And just because they have certain beliefs and so forth, and it might not resonate with you, please be respectful. That's what our show's about. We always like to be open and say, hey, we have questions and see what it's about. It's to open and expand our minds. So just as a reminder.
It doesn't mean that necessarily these are our beliefs either. These are just us opening the floor to all possibilities. So, take what you want, leave what you don't.
Yes. And let's all welcome Silver Wolf of Wayward Soul. I'm excited. She's here from the UK. Luckily, she had worked it out with us that we could have her on board for a earlier show. And she is, even though it's late her time, she has, decided that it was all right for her. So I'm very happy about that.
Here she is.
Hello, Silver. So Silver, if you can tell us about you, because, one of the things I was interested about you especially is, and I've been watching you personally through the vlogs, and I used to watch you on tarot a lot. So I kind of been following your journey. So I know a lot more. But one of the things that I was very interested in with you is you've been so open about your experiences and following your dreams. And that's what's so important to me is when people are authentic and following and utilizing their gifts. And so if you could just tell us about that and your experience with it.
Sure. For me, it's always been really, really important that when you suddenly find out you have these gifts and they rock up and knock on your bedroom door or whatever, you feel so alone and slightly crazy at the same time. Am I seeing this dead person? Am I hearing this random voice? So it's been really important for me to kind of share the reality. And it kind of goes in between that and also those who are actively trying to develop themselves. It isn't like the movies, and you're not a failure if it isn't like Sixth Sense and they're not walking up and having this big fact, because it is not the movies, people, honestly.
Right.
So yeah, everybody's different, and I'm as a person, very grounded. So that's kind of how I try and keep it. There is no drama in my sexuality. It is as it presents, and that's kind of really. So yeah, that's how I like it. No drama,
right? So when did you decide at this point that you were going to do this professionally? I mean, you obviously have a passion for this as well, and a passion to help souls, move to the other side. But when did you decide that this was definitely something that you were just going to go for?
It kind of, I hate to sound like a ridiculous person, but it was my decision, but kind of also wasn't. My allies, which is kind of what they call my guides, but they feel different, stepped forward and kind of went, okay, stop being a pussy. You need to step up and actually show people that it isn't like the movies, and that there is a different way to do things, and that you don't have to follow a spiritualist mindset, or you don't have to particularly go into shamanism, and there is actually no right path or wrong path. And everything is so personal. So it was kind of, I'm just aware I never answer any of your questions, Tanya Lee, and I'm just going to rabbit.
That's all right.
When Silver. It was when I was, oh my God, the word exorcism was really hard for me to wrap my head around.
Right.
Because obviously it's an exceptionally Christian word, and in actual fact it really isn't. In the dictionary there's nothing Christian about it, it's just they kind of nicked it.
I got to be honest with you. Because I'm a little bit of a nerd with definitions. Johanna will tell you, even on our shows, we do it. I'm like, and I'm just put the definition of what this means. I actually looked it up too, because I was like, is this more like,
Right?
or not? And when I looked it up, I was like, actually, it has nothing to do with that. So I was actually really surprised by that. So that was another thing that I wanted to talk to you about, is because being an exorcist, with the definition of it, how is that different than just being a ghost hunter, right? Because a ghost hunter, you're just evaluating and witnessing things. So
and what is your definition, Tanya? Tanya, what is the definition that you pulled out? Because I think a lot of people would be curious to know what the exorcism is.
To rid an area of something negative. That's all an exorcism means. That's it. And that'll be what Tanya Lee found.
Yeah, that's basically it. That's what I found, was it was just removing this negative energy or this negativity. And that's what I was blown away about, because I was thinking it was going to be like this, pea soup thing.
Well, then I'm an exorcist. Yes.
Right?
That too.
100%. Yeah.
Because that was the first thing I thought. I was like, well, this isn't like the movie. I was expecting, whatever his name was, Father, from the movie Exorcist to come out. I was like, that's actually not what it is. So what, with that in mind, when did, because you can't go to school for it, right? There's this so what's involved in it?
Since I first to be fair, when I started seeing dead people when I was a kid, they were never nice, dead people. It was never your granny going, hey, would you like a cookie? The older I got, the worse it got. When I went to do my Reiki Masters and all that kind of stuff, it would be gargoyles that came in to actually have a nice conversation and be like, hey, Silver, just to let you know, there's a threat coming from over here and we're going to help and protect. And it's just, the only way I can describe it is I've always been very much surrounded by things that people would deem as dark, but they're the ones that have led me down the exorcist path. Like gargoyles are on the outside of churches to protect the church and people in it, but people still attribute them with badness and darkness and all that kind of stuff. But literally, exorcisms began because the dark basically suggested that it was needed. And for the last 10 years, I've always been the one that random friends have called to get incubuses out of their homes, to get stuff from children. And it's just very much been word of mouth and grown prolifically. And far more obviously in America than England, because the energy is very, very different here. But it's just, I've never been one that's been asked to come in and do healing. I've always been the one who's been asked to come in and get rid of what needed to be gotten rid of.
That's interesting when you say that with the, between the UK and America, because I feel like there's more history out with you guys, so that there would be more there. But I guess it's because of how we came about and so forth.
Yeah, and obviously your history is our fault, and there is far more history yours. It's just not written, so everything's the same. But yeah, no, it's just when you step off a plane, it's very different energies in both places. Very, very different.
Right.
So yeah,
that's
interesting graphic as well. So yeah.
That's interesting. So for when you had stated, I'm just going back a little bit, when you had started seeing things when you were a child, and did you, is it something that you brought up to people, or was it just something that you just
I brought it up to my mum when I was young. I have very, very few memories of childhood, but she then died when I was 8, and then I very much got shut down. And then, but throughout, I always remember seeing things, but not necessarily saying anything about it and feeling things. Because again, I grew up in an environment where it wasn't necessarily going to be appreciated and wanted. So I know how it feels to kind of see these things and not really know what to do about it, which is kind of what so many teenagers and stuff that don't have a clue what's going on, because it's so scary when you're on your own. But yeah, and I think majority of mediums and clairvoyance that have kind of the same experiences. A lot of the time it isn't a big bang like a lot of books say it is, and it is generally kind of, and it's hard to kind of put two and two together. Some people automatically think they've got a mental health problem. Some people just think they've got carbon monoxide poisoning. So it's trial and error, trying to figure it all out.
And have you debunked any of that as well, where someone has not come in and it's not been, a ghost or anything, and it has been something? Okay. Yeah.
Of course, there are people that come in and it's just bad life choices.
Right.
Or, you know what, you've just got a really, really bad house in terms of your timber is shocking and you need to move. So yeah, no, it's not all paranormal, far from it.
Yeah, and I think that's what I found really intriguing about you, is because with most people who do like the ghost hunting and everything, and they use a lot of equipment, they're trying to document it, right? They're just trying to document what's happening and so forth, which is cool. It's great. But they're
a thing.
Right, but what's really interesting with you is that you are actually going personally into someone's space, getting to know them, knowing how they're feeling, so that you can connect and actually help help them in that sense. So I think that's what's so interesting about you, is that you have that concept. And I don't really see that, like, I almost see it as like kind of like a niche. I'm sure everybody has different gifts that they're using on this, but how overwhelming has that been for you with people, how they come out to you and they ask for help? I mean, it's like do they call the Ghostbusters? I mean, to call Wayward Soul.
It's really funny. I get a lot of hate mail because of the whole I don't record it, and I'm not against ghost hunters, but you don't go and annoy a soul and then leave it there to be stuck in torture. You take it, you move it on, and that's it. You psychopomp it out. In terms of how they come out, the people or the souls that I'm talking to, which one?
Well, I guess that's actually a good point. I guess I would say with the souls, the souls that you're talking to.
It can be really funny. I find that every soul's different. Some people think, and again, films, it's their fault for this, but think that ghosts can do certain things, entities can do other things, shadow men can do other things. And everyone's different. Sometimes before I go to a location I'm planning to go on, I'll have a visit from a spirit, and I can't move that spirit on from here. I have to go to that location to move it on. I have them sometimes come to me in my dreams. Sometimes, particularly the male spirits or very, very angry women, run up into my face, shout at me, try to tell me they're okay, and then kind of explain that actually they're not, and they lost and they can't find anybody, because they've had, especially in places where there's been a lot of ghost hunters go and try and make contact, and then the spirits expect help, and then that help obviously doesn't come, and then I arrive and they expect the same.
Right.
So I get a lot of aggression from spirits that makes my job really hard sometimes. But yeah, no, once I kind of cut through and be like, look, not the same, then yeah, send them across. But it's even down to like random things, like a particular figurine in my house will knock over multiple times, and then I will find that once I've been to a location and dealt and crossed stuff over, it will stop being knocked over. So just any way they can.
And do you find that with being in this energy around these, and then you come back, do they ever follow you? Are there any souls that actually don't leave, or don't just say, no, I'm not leaving?
If they don't want to leave and they're not bothering anybody, I'll leave them there, not a problem. Ghost hunters, bad boys. But if there's something that tries to follow me home, I have kind of a set process to ensure that I don't get followed home. And if I do, that gets dealt with. Because I can't risk that. Because I know how they travel. And for example, with me talking to you on camera now, some can obviously jump through that kind of stuff. So yeah, no, some do try and follow me through, some try and attach. I've got bruises and scratches from things that have tried to get me previously. But again, it's just something that I try not to focus on, because the fear makes it 10 times worse when you know you have a spirit in your home.
Right. And that's what's like to me. You say it so matter-of-factly, like sometimes I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. It happened to me.
But kind of out of 100 times, maybe 2 maybe have left some kind of physical mark because they're proper wrong-uns. But generally, not so much. We're alive. We're the ones that have the power. So, yeah.
Right. It's funny. And then what within the practice, what do you find is the most difficult aspect for people, I mean, not souls, in today's society to really grasp, because they are the non-believers and so forth, because that's got to be a struggle. And I know you've been authentic about it, but what do you find is the most difficult aspect for you?
For me, it's some people are very venomous about being a non-believer. Like, I'm trying to think what I don't believe in. Like, I've never met a unicorn, right? So it's not I don't believe in them, but until you show me the evidence, I've got no time for unicorns. I've met random mythological creatures on the astral realm. That is not one of them. But I don't go around shouting at people going, how dare you have a unicorn t-shirt on? You're
right.
The entire general public.
Johanna, did you just put your unicorn crown on?
Honestly, let me just get one out of my drawer. It's just the narrow-mindedness of people is what I find very, very difficult. Very difficult. It's the narrow-mindedness and the fact that they are just so staunched in their belief that they just haven't even asked a question, but they just want to argue at me.
Right.
Not with me, just at me.
Right. And I know Johanna and I've talked about many shows of that, of like the point of setting boundaries and just kind of allowing things to go through as well. So we've definitely been in that role too. So I'm very empathetic with that. So I completely can understand that. Can you let us know some of your top stories though? Because I am so intrigued with some of the stories that you might have or you'll be able to share with us.
I very much because I feel this is where my psychologist side kicks in, and I'm like, what can I share and what can't I share?
No, I hear you.
There are, so I'm trying to flip locations. So I've worked on quite a few, obviously majority of my cases are in America, because like I said, the energy there is very, very different to over here. And honestly, all the empaths in America should just come and have a holiday over here, because it would be like a proper break. It honestly would.
It would be.
Or Ireland. All come over. There was one in Mississippi that was very terrifying for the family. There was a lot of physical markings involved on some very young children and some very elderly people, which involved scratches and bite marks, and physically seeing a 3-year-old getting slapped around the face, but you couldn't see what was slapping, and there was noise and that kind of stuff. And having to get rid of that. I tend to be called in as the big guns. So kind of like when others have tried and can't get a handle on it or not sure what's going on, because a lot of the time when a psychic or a medium will go in, they will try and hide if they know obviously you're going in with the intention of getting them out. So they'll they'll hide, or they'll look really scary or pretend to be someone's beautiful nan.
So you're really coming in at the tail end for some of the higher risk, I guess, ones. And
I tend to get a phone call when it's like, no, we don't know what to do. What do we do? But the thing is as well, this is not coming from an ego standpoint, because the majority of the time it's my dudes that are doing it. I just kind of walk in and go, right, guys, what the bejesus is going on? But there's no point, especially because I'm here, so obviously I'll have to do it remotely. There's no point phoning me if it's just a normal haunting from down the road.
Right. And how long does this last? When you go in to do this for these clearings?
When I do a session with my guys, for me, it tends to be, I always tend to do a follow-up, because I don't like going in, doing it, and then leaving it. So if it's remotely and it's not directly my case, and if I'm helping out, for example, and sometimes I help out the Warren Legacy Foundation, then I'll ensure that things are okay kind of through the following weeks, which is difficult because a lot of the time people that have a haunting kind of get a little bit of a codependent relationship with the haunting. So once the haunting's finished and they're not getting the attention from people around them or their friends, then they can kind of cause things to happen, which is, so I kind of go in and ensure that doesn't happen going forward. Also, but if it's a personal case, emotionally, I tend to work with them for a month afterwards, because depending on how bad it is, you get lots of cases of PTSD. And it's just really, at the end of the day, you have something invisible that you can't control physically harming you and or your children. So to think that it ends, you get rid of it and it goes, would be really, really silly. It's really absolutely terrifying. And I don't think people appreciate that, because again, in the films, you get rid of it and we like cut to credits. Whereas that's
we're done. We put it in a box.
right? You emotionally, you're out. You go have a muffin, everything's okay, but that's not how it is. It's soul destroying and terrifying. And for weeks long, you'll still be expecting it to happen. And so, yeah, there's a lot of kind of counseling that goes on with that.
I think it's interesting what you said too, in regards to that people get attached to it, because I can see that, especially with energy in general, if you get attached to a mind frame or a mindset, especially with energy, and you just pull it back in. I mean, how often does it come where they're just not even pulling that particular in, but pulling other entities in because they are in that state? I mean, to get out of that, I'm assuming that they need some kind of support group or anything like that afterwards.
It's their choice.
Yeah.
It's their choice. The issue is kind of, it happens a lot with people who have very small lives. So if you don't work and you don't have a social network, you'll often find that that is your purpose in life, is fighting this being that's living in your home. And once that being is taken away, what are you supposed to, and people feel like so lost. So I try and ensure that before that happens, kind of like something is set up that means they now have a new purpose, whether it's volunteering or flipping, babysitting the grandkids, whatever it is, because otherwise that becomes their focus. And then all of a sudden there's a void that needs to be filled, and the universe will flip and will fill it, and not with something good. So yeah.
And how often is it, like when you have, you go in, you said there's a haunting going on, there's somebody here, there's something, like, are you able to be like, it's actually not a person, like you said, it's a gargoyle, or like how are you able to differentiate it on that level? Is it something where you just know?
It's just, it's, a lot of the time I won't tell people, because then it's even more terrifying.
Okay, I see.
So a lot of the time it's a judgment call. If there is someone in the home who is clairvoyant and has seen it, I will tell them exactly what I've seen, so they don't think they're going mad. And so I'm not saying that they're wrong, because they need that validation and show, you are okay and you're not going crazy and it's not hallucination. But if someone can't see, they don't know what's going on, they've just seen loads of orbs everywhere, then I will 100% just say it's a spirit, and it will be an entity or something a lot worse.
Right.
Because otherwise, again, you're just maximizing the fear.
Yeah, and that's a good point, especially if you don't know what their beliefs are or so forth, that you just kind of keep it general in that way until you can kind of read that person and what it is.
The thing is as well, if I tell, for example, if they are being haunted by a spirit and I explain, say if I say you're being haunted by a Kiumba, they don't know what that is. So the first thing they'll do is go and Google it. So all that energy getting shoved towards the Kiumbas and all that bad stuff. So they'll feed off that bad boy. Yeah. So yeah, you just try and keep it simple, really.
Yeah, no, and I think that's really important because, as you said, you were educating people too. So, and that's something that, our show's all about, is educating people, because I can tell you right now, when we say ghost hunters, we're thinking Ghostbusters and The Exorcist. And, I got my friends on board right now, like, what's going to go?
That's not me. I'm not either of those. I'm just a random English girl who goes in and puts stuff back where it should be. And that's literally it. Mary Poppins with an edge.
Mary Poppins with an edge. Yeah. I love it.
But don't have her back, or should it? Yeah.
So the one you had with that was with the child, that was in America, you said? That was in Missouri?
Mississippi.
Oh, yeah. Mississippi. What about the ones near your area? Have there anything that's been completely different?
My area, there tends to be a lot more spirits that would be deemed as being fae. Fae is a really grey area, because some people like an incubus and a succubus. Some people deem it as a demon. Other people deem it as fae. Other people deem it as a completely different class of vampire spirit. But I deal with quite a few incubuses around here, which is very funny. And they're always fun to deal with as well, because obviously when you're dealing with a spirit that's sexually vampiric and you go to kind of get them out, they then try to appear as something that you will find sexually pleasing. So when I walk into this room to get rid of a succubus, The Rock is lying there naked on a bed sheet for me, and I'm like, all right, Dwayne. Or who else I had? Liam Neeson, that was nice. So yeah, they've got a sense of humor, those ones.
Yeah. I always think of it. Do you ever watch that show Lost Girl with the succubus?
Yes. Yeah.
I always think of that show with the Fae and the succubus.
Yeah, that show is actually not far off, hilariously. So yeah.
I love that show. That was in Canada, and I thought that was the best show. It was one of my favorite paranormal shows that I was hooked on, but I get really into that kind of stuff. So I can easily get falled into that. So what are some, with educating people, and like, do you do anything in regards to like workshops or things like that? Or is it just simply you are out there to help people, but do you also educate people too in this? Because it is so different for people who might have strong beliefs or,
It's really, I literally make it up as I go. I can't even lie to you. Like, I do have some webinars. I literally do what my allies tell me to do, like the little good woman I am. I do webinars. I run circles at the moment. It's like the last week of the Fae Circle. Protection webinar is going to be the next thing. I have a Patreon group, which is where I have most of my kind of how-tos. And that was really important for me because when I was beginning to come out and wanted to develop, there was nowhere safe for me to go where everything wasn't all angels and unicorns. And for a lot of people, it isn't that, because that's not a balanced view of how the universe is. So on my Patreon, it's kind of like how to navigate through the good and the bad points, and how to open your chakras and all the basics. Yeah, that's, and I like controlling that in terms of I can boot people out if they're being mean to other people. That's why I do that on Patreon. I like the control.
You like to control, set your boundaries straight. Set your boundaries up. I think
Totally.
it's definitely an interesting mix. I'm intrigued by it because, Johanna reads a little bit different. She's a shaman. She's connected to the galactic. So I'm sure she's channeling right now what she has to say. And, with me, especially being an empath, I have had my own experiences, but nothing like to the point of like, oh my gosh, I've just been fascinated. And I find that the people who are fascinated are the ones who actually do experience it. And that's just something that I've noted too, especially, anybody in when they go down that realm, I'm like, it's probably because they actually have gifts, or they're realizing it, or they're intrigued by it because they aren't utilizing their gifts to the fullest. Do you feel that way? Or
100%. If you're curious about it, there's a reason for that. 100%.
Yeah.
And again, it's just doing it in a protected way is the most important thing for me. Because of obviously everything I experience, I am hilariously paranoid. So as soon as anyone is like, I'm going to go out and do I'm going to walk around some ruins and see what I pick up, the first thing is make sure you're protected and grounded. Because that way you get the best messages and you're safe. I'm like everybody's spiritual mumsy. Boring at a party. But no, it is that way. There's a reason that you're attracted to it. And you'll often find as well, the more obviously you research and you go into it, the more you're drawing that energy to you.
That's a good point, because it's kind of like, it's basically the vibration of what you're bringing in. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
Cool. Johanna, you on mute?
Yes.
You were awfully quiet. I know it was in my interview mode. She's like, I was listening.
I was just letting you do your thing.
I was just curious, Johanna, with what because, when she especially said with the energy of pulling it in, because we've discussed this so much about how you just pull it in, and like how you felt about that as too.
Well, I mean, I connect with, the main people, my main guides are Lilith and Goddess Kali Ma and Agni, and they're all considered dark in the world of rainbows and butterflies. The people are like, you connect with who? And it's like, well, I help you integrate the shadow. And I have a lot of clients who believe that they're being psychically attacked or have attachments. And when I go in and work with their DNA and stuff, I always find that a lot of the time, at least in my experience, now I have seen times where, and have experienced myself, entity attachments. Tanya is well aware of one, but a lot of the ones that come to me they're lower aspects of themselves that is hanging on to them and have created and manifested into what they feel is a whole entire other being that's attacking them. And they get so attached to this is happening to them. And what I'm getting is it's not something separate from you completely, but they're very much what you were talking about, Silver, where it's almost like they need that to be happening in their life. And it's really, it's terrible, because I'm like, that's not what it is. Now, if it was, I would tell you that's what it is, but that's not what's happening right now. Right. And, but I firmly believe that the lower aspects of ourself, right, the parts of us that we aren't willing to let go of, can actually manifest in somebody's energy as a separate entity or manifest as a being to them. Do you come across that, Silver, where you're like, that's not an actual spirit?
100%. A lot of the people that have, oh my God, I have this argument repeatedly, like Satan isn't some external being that's going to turn up with some randomly gorgeous pointy tail and a gorgeous set of horns. It's actually you and the stuff that you don't want to admit about yourselves. And like, as I'm sure you've experienced, people are haunted by their own soul parts.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have a traumatic event happen and part of your soul leaves and then continues living that cycle, and other people will see that as them being haunted. The soul is such a complex thing, and people just think it's this gorgeous bit of blue light that runs around and it's not. It is so complicated, and the universe is so complicated, but nobody wants to hear that, because we are obviously in an era of you buy a book and that fixes your entire life, which is really frustrating for people like us, because no, love, that's not the way it works.
I think it's definitely been more open now. People are more open to stuff because of technology. I think technology and, the media. But I think what happens is it gets oversaturated to the point where it makes it look like nonsense. And that's really something that I want to voice out, because not all of this is nonsense. This stuff happens. It's not like a point of it's just, like you said, a movie or anything like that. So, having a different depiction of what it is. I mean, when I think of an exorcism, I'm thinking of someone's going to be tied to the bed and there's going to be throw up everywhere, but like,
who is an exceptionally inept exorcist.
Right.
Exceptionally inept and very driven. So they're tying someone to a bed.
My experience was, being on land where, this is how I see it and how I'm shown it. So I'll be interested to hear your perspective on it. But sometimes the souls that we experience and consider that are haunting us, it's almost like their beliefs were so hardcore when they transitioned that they end up in this, almost like this void or purgatory place, right? And so they're walking thinking that they haven't left, or they're like in this in-between, I don't even know, parallel void, or I don't even know what to call it. But in an experience that I had, there were several souls that had not transitioned fully and were not really wanting to. And as I did the seance to really just kind of to speak with them and guide them back to the light, and one decided to hitch a ride on me. And I got really, really, really sick, and I had to really cleanse my energy. But I am a triple water sign. I am literally the garbage dump of people's energy. And so I have to have like the most extreme boundaries when I do anything and keep my energy clean. But do you feel the same way? Do you feel like some of these souls that when they transition, they just had these hardcore beliefs and like end up in some random?
I think every soul's different in terms of the ones that get trapped. But yeah, the ones that kind of die and expect something very particular, and if they don't get that, they get stuck. They can be quite difficult to move over, and I have to be very blunt with those ones, and be like, look, this is as good as it gets. What do you want? I very much believe in terms of that there's this whole debate, isn't there, about heaven and hell, and I absolutely believe that we kind of decide both of those. the way that my belief system works is that at the moment we're in hell as it is, and then when we pass over, we kind of get stuck where we decide to get stuck. So either we can transition with our open minds to back to wherever the bejesus we're supposed to be, or we can sit there and wait for Archangel Michael to pick us up with his choir of cherubs singing at us, which is never going to happen. So yeah, again, it's about the open-mindedness, and I 100% believe that love and kindness goes so far in transitioning. It is untrue. It's just all about kindness to yourself and other people, not just other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That vibration alone dissipates a lot of stuff. And what do you think about people who, for the ones who think that they can do something with a spell or remove things in that sense? What is your take on that? Is there, because I'm not nixing anybody who's into that, who's into magic and all that, but for the people who think that they can get rid of something or bound someone in, do you find that sometimes is that someone's bound in there, or have you never really, it's never really been like that for your level?
Okay. The only reason that I'm pausing is because this makes me very, very angry. There are people who will bound spirits to them on purpose. There are people who will bound spirits to jewelry on purpose. There are people who will accidentally stop somebody from crossing over just through their grief and the amount of attachment that they have to them. That one is the saddest ever. When you have a child die, your child dies, letting go is so difficult, which is why kind of like a lot of the African belief systems, there is a year between when a person dies and when you can speak their name again to ensure that they transition properly and easily and you're not constantly dragging them back over. That happens a lot. Yeah, absolutely, we can bind ourselves to soul. There are also some people aren't just people either, which is very difficult when you come across those, and that's a very interesting conversation to have. Yeah, like I say,
what do you mean by that?
Some people, I've found that some people, they don't have a soul and they are simply a vortex, so something can pop in and pop out. Sometimes I can look at people and know that they are not human soul. They are fae, or there is goddess or god in them. Again, I believe, again, the same as some of the African belief systems, where when your soul comes down, it touches things and gets a little shade of those things. So people who vibrate with crystals, it will touch rock energy on its way down. Those who really vibe with the ocean, it will touch that on its way down. So you end up kind of being a bit of a cluster. So your vibration vibrates with different things. And sometimes I just think when that soul comes down, something else eats it and it just leaves a void. Yeah, like I say, it's not like in the books. It's really complicated, really complicated. It's just like science and like medicine. There is no one answer to anything.
Yeah, it's almost like you're like an investigator, because I can't imagine or fathom how much you have to even go through, or just be like, okay, I know I can identify this.
Honestly,
has there ever been?
I go into a case and I'm like, how does this even exist? I'm still learning what exists and what doesn't, because there's just no end.
So what are the cases? Have you ever gone to a case like, I don't know what this is right now? Like, I just don't know what this is. I know there's something here. There's something definitely here. I just don't know what it is. And like, have you gone through that rabbit hole of just trying to figure out?
Those ones, I'm very, very thankful to my allies, because they're the ones where they kind of tend to introduce me to those entities before I go in. Kind of like the most recent, I know this is going to sound not good, but kind of like when I was in Mexico, like when I first met an archangel, I literally just was livid. Like, how dare you? You belong on a Christmas tree. How dare you actually exist? That took ages to wrap my little head around. Like 10 years ago, I was like, what? I ended up actually throwing up in a department store because the energy was so strong from that one. When I was in Mexico
with a galactic.
He was hilarious. He was not impressed with me. He was hilarious. And in Mexico, I only just learned the actual like vampires are a thing, and I'm still wrapping my head around that, like not succubus or incubus, but in a different way, and that is something that, again,
is it like you're thinking like almost like an energy vampire, or is it more like a vampire, like a
vampire, like a vampire? Yeah, because obviously, quite frankly, we're all energy vampires because we all have to get energy from somewhere.
right?
But yeah, no, that one was a strange one. And only very recently have fallen angels come onto my radar because they've started showing up. So still, I'm like, really? You really exist, and you're not just in the Bible? But yeah, apparently they do. So I'm trying to figure my head around that. I am 100% a skeptic. So until it shows up and tells me some information that it shouldn't really know, I got nothing.
So it's you're almost looking for tangible evidence for you to start make sense.
I don't believe any of these mofos until they prove themselves. Same with boys. That's the way you got to be, right?
It's a good point.
So what do you say to somebody who believes that they have someone from a past life or someone from wherever, just someone tormenting them, that they are feeling like they're waking up with scratches or bruise, or they feel somebody burning them or whatever? Like, what is the protocol? Like, they just reach out to you? Is that you have a process that you take them through?
For me, I don't have anything written down on paper because every case is different. They tend to send me an email. The first thing that I tend to ask for is photographs of their sleeping space if they're waking up with something. So and a picture of themselves, so I can figure out whether it's something in the environment or something that's specifically attached to them. As we all know, basically, an exorcism is the same as a spirit release. I'm just sick and tired of the church having power over that word. It frustrates me and I want it back. So yeah, it's whether it needs to be a spirit release or a house clearing that needs to be done. And again, like you say about the past lives, whether it's someone from past life, people again have a very romantic view about past lives, but people have killed you in your past life and they want a little bit of revenge sometimes. So they can also, and again, it can be yourself and your own soul part from a past life that wants to come in and actually do you over. So yeah, it's just literally a conversation. I keep things, again, I know it doesn't sound like it, but as undramatic as possible. And
I like to do the same thing. I like to not, when I get the messages, from people or, clients talk to me, I try not to put any emotion or anything into it. And I don't have to really try that anymore, but I don't want to feed their fear. I mean, that's like the worst thing you can do.
No, exactly. And that's, and it's some people as well, I often find, who, again, someone who's had a haunting long term, they themselves feed off somebody else's reaction. So the last thing anybody will ever get from me is emotional reaction, no matter how bad it is, no matter if your kid's being dangled off a balcony, you won't get an emotional reaction from me because that's just feeding everything negative that's around you. So yeah, it's just literally a conversation. How we doing? Let's fix this. And then myself and my allies will go in and fix it. And even now, like an exorcism that I did maybe 6 weeks ago will be very different to one I did this week. And a soul walk that I did last week will be very different. And they're constantly ensuring that I evolve and understand how things work on an energetic level. And I think we should always be like that. None of us know everything, we never will do. And yeah, it's just a constant learning curve. And I think that's important for everybody to know, is that even like the proper good gurus still don't know what they're doing half the time.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. It's always, that's the one thing about being even a healer, is that you're doing your own healing still. So
every time I do a DNA restructuring, I see something new, experience something new, see colors that I never knew existed. I mean, you name it. So it's forever a student, and I'm always fascinated when I do healings, because I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to see today.
But as soon as you stop thinking that way, they stop your development, and then you reach a ceiling. So you have to constantly be open, which is so interesting.
Now, have you ever, I was intrigued by this when you had said that there's some souls out there that don't have a soul and are just walking about, right? Are those ones that are just the vortex? Like they're just getting, basically, are they being possessed by other stuff? Or are they just walking around soulless? Like how?
Some people are walking around soulless, and it's really, some people sometimes there's a haunting and there's literally just a vortex in the house and you can see the spinniness. Some people are like that, and it tends to be there's a spinniness around the heart and a spinniness around the base chakra. Spinniness is now a word, by the way, ladies.
I was gonna say, I was like, is that a UK word? I'm like, I'm gonna have to look that up.
And then some people are just a void, and it's not even that they're attracting things in. It's almost like something will go in and possess, and then as soon as they're in there for kind of like 3-5 minutes, they can't cope with the energy of that skin shell, for want of a better phrase. So then they'll jump out. It tends to be they can't be possessed for long periods of time, and I don't know why. I don't actually think I want to know why, but it's like their body is inhospitable to anything.
Do you think what would these I don't even know what to call it, soulless, what would they be considered from the perception of, like, you know, for regular people? Like, would we see them almost as like someone who might be considered bipolar, someone who is, or like, would you recognize it, or would it be like, no, you wouldn't even know that person wouldn't know, or they just think they were emotionally detached?
Yeah, just emotionally detached. Obviously signs of psychopathy, but there's no, no, because I get very frustrated with the mental illness / paranormal dynamic that people have decided exists. It frustrates me beyond frustration, because there are so many people that kill themselves because of something paranormal, and it wasn't a mental health issue. And as soon as you say something, automatically you're labeled as having a mental health problem. And just it's difficult when someone who is kind of like, they're just like a walking void. The only way I can describe it is their eyes. You look in their eyes and there's just nothing. And in my past career, I've worked with psychopaths, and I've worked with sociopaths, and I've worked with people that have killed multiple people, and they are very different from a walking void. And like you said about there's just nothing. It's really strange, and it's almost like they don't have an aura. They're just
empty.
Well, that's because when who was it Edgar Casey who said that our aura goes away, like there's no aura 6 weeks before you're going to transition, and I think it was him who an elevator door opened and no one in that elevator had an aura, and he backed up, and that elevator, the cord snapped and they all died. And I thought that was so interesting, because that was something that I thought, our eyes are windows to the soul, and you can read my primary gift is clairsentience. So I always focus in on the eyes. The eyes tell me so much about somebody's soul. So I love that you said that. But one thing I was hearing when you were talking, when you said the word possessed, an interesting spin was, it's just another word for like possession, right? You're attaching this to yourself. Like you possess this item. I feel like there's not a big difference, because when there's stuff around you, you're choosing what to attach to you and what to let move through you.
No, there's some who, no, the possession, no, sorry, hang on. If you're the ones who are kind of like the walking spinny things, they obviously need to fill something. They're the ones who will often end up drinking too much, smoking too much, having too much sex, whatever it is. They're the ones that do that. But there are other people who are possessed because, quite frankly, we are everything dead people want to be, the gods, spirits. We eat their offerings so they can taste food again, smoke a cigarette again. Imagine never having a Pinot Grigio again. Like, they have that, which is why kind of we're the ones who drink the offerings so they can taste it. So no, there are some who are possessed because they want something in life. And we all know the silly stories about people who are like, come on, demon, possess me because I want to be more good looking and thinner and stuff. And there are people who do that 100%. Right. But then there's also children who I know and have witnessed who have been possessed, and that is not their choice. So it varies on the person and the spirit, and the state of their soul is a huge part of it.
Right.
It's all complicated.
So my brother actually has a question on YouTube, and he came in probably in the tail, so he probably missed the whole thing about that. His question was, can anyone perform an exorcism, or does it have to be a priest? Now he obviously missed the whole priest thing, but it did bring up a good point. With an exorcism, or is there anything where someone can have their own? Can you give any tips for people who are experiencing this when they know that, hey, you really do need to get a professional in here, you need to get somebody in here, you can't do this on your own? Are there any signs of that?
It's, for me, there's a huge reason, unless, oh my God, there's no other way for me to put it, but unless you can see the spirit that you're dealing with or talk to the spirit that you're dealing with, I don't understand you would try and even attempt to do an exorcism.
So Kai, do not try this. Do not try this at home, Kai.
At home. And also, it makes me laugh that priests always speak in Latin. If I was a dead person and I was possessing somebody and some priest started talking to me in Latin, I don't know what he's saying. So it's not going to mean anything to me. In terms of when to call someone professional in is when it starts affecting physical health or your mental health. It's really hard because a lot of the time, obviously, as soon as you know you're being haunted, you jump straight into Christianity, because that's what we all know, the Lord's Prayer, and the intent behind that is so powerful. If you believe in it and if you believe in Jesus and he's your dude and all that jazz, that's fantastic. But if you're then trying to exorcise someone who was taken from a country in Africa, that's going to piss them off categorically, that you have slayed their children, raped their wife, and now you're quoting the Bible at them to try and get them to leave. That is not going to end very well for anybody. So it tends to be in those, they're the cases that I tend to get called into, because a lot of the allies that I work with are Voodoo spirits or Quimbanda spirits or the Orishas, because quite frankly, nobody else does that. Everyone's a white bloke with a cross on their hat that I know that's an exorcist, and that's not right or fair.
Right.
And they're the ones I tend to get called in. The priest has gone in and it's made things worse, and then I have to go in as backup and deal with it. So yeah, it's, again, I really wish I could give a clear answer, but I can't.
No, I mean, listen, that was the whole point we wanted to bring you on, is because we wanted to show the different side of it, because there is so many people out there that think that's what it is. I looked it up too. I had to look it up in the dictionary. I'm like, yeah, it's this religion. I'm like, how does this work? Like, because I am interested in ghost hunting and the paranormal, and I've experienced things like shadow people and all that. So I am intrigued by it, but I'm always intrigued to the level too of, with some of these hauntings and some of the stories I've seen, it's not always just about the one place that you can actually, people can carry things with them if they are attached to them, that this is not necessarily like you have to come into a house. And, it could be, a particular person and stuff like that. And that's something I wanted to get across too. And if you could talk more on that.
I once had a spirit, hilariously, who he basically died driving his ice cream van. And this little girl went to go and buy an ice cream. And this guy had served this, I think she was about 4 or 5, served this girl for kind of since she was little, and he really liked her and was invested in her. So the next thing you know, this guy's soul is attached to this 5-year-old girl because he jumped from the ice cream van to her. So it's not always kind of a house. They can jump from people to people. They can jump from objects to people. Some of them jump because your light is brighter and they think you can help them cross over or find something that they need. Sometimes they'll jump because you're vulnerable and you're upset, and either they want to help or you're an easy in. It depends on the spirit. But the saddest things that I've witnessed is when people have gone in and they've mistook a very sensitive spirit or soul that needs help, and they've tried to exorcise it in a very traumatic, aggressive way, and it's just a young child that needs to be crossed over, or a mother who's trying to find her children and she's trying to get your attention and your help, and then you're throwing holy water all over her. Exorcism should always be, and clearing should always be the least traumatic for everybody as possible.
Now, because you come in the dirty work, right? You're I feel like you're like the cleaner on Breaking Bad. You come in and fix up afterwards.
Yeah.
Do you find that are there some cases that are just like off the top funny? Like when you come and you're like, this is not what you think it is. Like, have you run into any of those where they're not been so serious that it's been something that like you'll never believe this, but
No, because honestly, like it tends to be there's kind of psychics, specifically the ones where I've gone in after others. Psychics or something have gone in so they would know if it's something hilarious. I often find the hardest cases, like Johanna was saying, are the ones where they've caused it themselves, and trying to explain that's really difficult. Like poltergeist activity is really hard saying, actually, do you know, it's kind of your fault, love. You need to go and get yourself a little psychologist, talk it out, and everyone will be fine. Go boxing for a hobby. They're the hardest ones, because the last thing that you want to do is haunt your family and like be shoving your kid off the top bunk. But it happens. It honestly happens. I can't even think of a hilariously funny one. They're all just actually pretty scary.
I mean, you brought up the poltergeist. Have you seen anything where there's things moving around, or like, are you witnessing this, or are you? Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's been, the usuals. Again, it tends to be focused around the kitchen because kitchens are the heart of the home. It's where a lot of people do their thinking, is what I find. Bedrooms or kitchens, when you're washing up, you go into this weird zone, or cooking, and you're kind of mulling everything over. Do you know what? I've never had poltergeist activity in a lounge or a bathroom, funnily enough. It does tend to be the kitchen.
I would think this would be big locations for that kind of stuff, or even just
Really spiritual places, very funny spiritual places.
But I'm sure you've witnessed things like the door slamming or things moving in that level.
Slamming, knocking, knives thrown at people, frying pans being thrown at a husband, hands thrown off. Especially when, for example, I will go into a home and be like, right, I'm just going to put something in this corner. And then as soon as I start trying to work with, say, for example, fire or plant medicine, that'll all get shoved out. So then Debbie gets told to leave and go and stand in the car park while I'm doing what I'm doing. Because you'll have to find poltergeist activity is coupled with another kind of haunting. Not always, but quite often.
Right.
Yeah. I find a lot of times that the spirits they get loud when you don't listen or pay attention to them. Like sometimes people pass over and they're trying to come back to say, you know what, this whole marriage, I was an asshole. And now I want to come back and say something to you. And the wife is thinking, oh my God, he's coming back from the dead to attack me. And it's like, no, that's not why he's here. He has a message for you. I'm trying to tell you the message. And it's like, it's so crazy how
perception.
It's such a fear-based thing, right?
Films.
It's so crazy.
Sells tickets. Yeah.
It does. But I mean, I remember when my mediumship opened up, I shut it down for benevolent beings because I didn't want to communicate with them. They are crazy the way they communicate, but they would be all kinds of them in my kitchen. When you said that, I laughed because I'd be like, I don't know who you belong to. I don't want to help you. Like, go somewhere else. And it's sad to say, but that's how it was. And I would do healings and I felt like Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost. I'd be like, oh my God, there's too many of you in here. And so I was like, nope, I don't want to talk to benevolence. I'm done. I will work with angels. I'll work with aliens. I'm not working with you.
I remember the group we were in, Johanna, and she was new in the group and she was going through the experience that you were talking about. And the first thing you said to her was like, you got to put the closed sign up.
Yeah, like she had no boundaries. And she was like, well, I have my light on. And I said, this is not Motel 6. Do not leave the light on for them. Like, no, shut it down.
It's funny.
Orderly queue. Always form an orderly queue.
I can't, but we suck up time here already. We are already at an hour. Silver, thank you so much for coming on board. This was, listen, we'll probably have you on again if you want to, just to talk about some other things. We do appreciate it. What is the best place where people can reach you? Is it waywardsoul.com?
It would be, definitely.
Okay.
Easy.
Yeah, just to check out her stuff. And she's got, even with your vlogs, I think they're just interesting when you're on there chit-chatting about your experience and stuff on Facebook. And there's no pretense. It's me in my pajamas generally
chatting to the camera, telling you all as an exorcist, I'm still scared of stuff I can't necessarily see.
And
So,
that's what's so great about it. You're being authentic about it. You're utilizing your gifts. You're not afraid of, to mess up or make mistakes. And it's kind of like, this is what I'm at and this is what's happening and I'm learning. And I think that's really the
I
coolest
think
thing.
it's awesome too.
Yeah. So kudos to you.
and you guys, thanks so much for having me and letting me be.
You're welcome. We appreciate it. So we will be on our regular time next week, not this Thursday, since we had our special guest here today. We'll be on Thursday of next week. That's with Samantha, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's with Samantha. We're having on for DNA activation. So we will be back on our regular time. Thanks, guys, for tuning in.
Thanks, Silver, for joining us.
Silver,
Thank
just stay on. Well, we're going to say go off here, but you stay on.
Ma'am.
Bye, guys.
Okay.